Hi there, this is Pat. Your test out curriculum walks through creating partitions and formatting disks and initializing them. And I wrote the following lab to reinforce some of those concepts. So we're going to basically partition and format disks through the GUI, disk management. We'll do it through the console, and we'll also do it in PowerShell. So with that, let's get started. So I'm going to log into one of our pre-configured virtual machines for class here. And this is one of those activities that you definitely want to do on a virtual machine and not your host computer. Since I accidentally did it on my host computer and ended up blowing away one of my drives. So this, again, make sure you're doing what you're doing is on a VM. Okay. So one of the nice things about PowerShell is we can quickly add a hard disk to our virtual machine. We'll do that real quick. Good. One disk, I think that's all I need for this activity. And let's go back to the lab. Let's see. So I have the steps here on how to do that in VMware to add a disk to your computer. We're going to go to disk management real quick and verify that we can see the disk. So I'm going to right click on start and select disk management. And we see that our new disk has been identified. In Windows, once you add a new disk, you need to initialize it, and then we need to choose if we want to store the partition information in a master boot record or a GUID partition table format. GPT is the latest and greatest, so pretty much that's what you're going to want to go with. I'm going to take a look at our lab real quick. So we're going to initialize it, then we're going to create a partition on it. This is pretty uneventful, so we'll initialize it. We see a change back here, down here. And now we can, now that our disk has been initialized, we can partition it and format it. We'll go with 10,000. And so through one wizard, we're basically going to, we first are partitioning a disk, and now we're going to format that partition. And I'll go with NTFS. The volume label can be Pat Vader. We'll quickly format it. Done. So we see that our new partition has showed up. That was pretty straightforward. Let's see, now add a second virtual hard disk to your VM, open the command console, run as administrator. Let's do that real quick. VM. Settings. Add another disk. Next, finish. All right, so we'll see that show up. Our new disk showed up. And now I'm going to open the command console and we'll kind of do what we just did on disk 1 on our new disk. I'll just type in CMD here to open our command prompt, and now here's the trick. You have to right click on it and run as administrator. It's a security thing because what we're going to do is we'll be altering our system, so they want to make sure at least you are at least acknowledging what you're doing requires administrative privileges. Disk, so we'll run disk part. And if I go back to my lab, you'll see that that is the first command you're executing. Now we're going to look at the current disks in our system. List. This is the old way of doing things. So this would have worked 20 years ago, and then we'll finalize this lab using PowerShell. So you can see that my virtual machine has 3 disks. The first 2 are initialized and set up with a global partition table or GUID partition table, and disk 2 has not been set up yet, so we're going to do that now. Select disk 2. I think I can just copy, and I can go into my VM and right click. Yep, good. So select disk 2. Again, this number may change depending on your system, so select disk 2 lines up with this disk here. We've done it. So disk has been selected. I got this just online. I've never executed this before, so we'll see if it works or not. All right, good. Now this is might not be necessary, but if your disk was not showing up as being online, maybe it isn't here. See, these disks are online. We'll see what happens. Copy. Well, this is already online, okay. So now we're going to initialize it, and that's basically what this convert command does. So we could convert it to MBR or GPT. We'll go MBR this time. There it goes. And we see a change down here. Good. We'll create a partition on it. Control C. Control V. We made a partition. Hasn't been formatted yet, but that's coming. In the lab here, I just have you running these two commands here just to see what Windows sees. So we have one primary partition. I can look at the volumes on my disk as well. So on my computer system, I have a number of volumes that are already set up. So now we're going to let's partition that volume. So we first have to select it, and then we'll format it and assign a drive letter to it. So let's see how that goes. So we've selected it, and now we're going to format it. And in class, I talked about, we could format it NTFS, FAT32, exFAT. There's a number of file systems that we can choose. I'm just going with NTFS here. That's done. I'm just curious now, so if we re-execute the list volume command, we see that we have a 60 gigabyte partition set up. It's not, you can tell there has not been a drive letter assigned to it, so I could assign a drive letter this way. Just right click and I could add a drive access to drive letter this way, or we can do it through the command line here. And again, this is a lot of work now, but if you are setting up like a setup script that would be running a bunch of new computers, whatever, this is where your work pays off. So you go through the pain of setting up once, and then you can use it over and over again. There we go. So now I have drive letter F. I can verify that. There's our F drive. So you can see that we have an E drive and an F drive. So that's so far we've added 2 disks to our virtual machine, and we've partitioned them, as you can see here in disk management. Good. So we're moving along pretty quick. Now we're going to run PowerShell. This is kind of where everything is heading nowadays. So again, make sure you run this on your virtual machine. I'll just start typing in. Oops. Let me just start typing in PowerShell here. PowerShell. And I want to run the ISE. It stands for Integrated Scripting Environment. I'm going to right click and run that as administrator. Yes. All right, there's 2 ways of working with the ISE. I can just type all my commands in the command prompt and run them. Do get disk. Or if I want to, I can click this arrow up here in this, which says script, and I can actually just type my commands in here, get disk, type in whatever I want, and then if you just move your cursor to the line that you want to run, so I'm on disk 1 line 1 right now, and I can click here, run selection, and that'll rerun, it'll run the command that's on line 1. So let me get rid of this side panel. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'll kind of leave this in the background so we can see what's going on. Let's go to PowerShell again, and let's go to my lab, and I want to run these commands. So I want to get disk. I'm going to copy those. I'm just going to put everything in my ISE here, in my scripting area. And this activity is just to kind of expose you to what can be done in PowerShell. We have a whole class on PowerShell, so don't get overwhelmed with it. At this point, you're just being exposed to it. And kind of what I tell my students in class is, as far as PowerShell goes, you notice you have these things called commandlets, and they're typically 2-word commands, or they're separated by a hyphen here, so it's verb noun: get disk, clear disk, initialize disk. And there's tons and tons of commandlets in PowerShell. Get user, new user, we can do pretty much anything you can do with the GUI you can do in PowerShell. Today we're just looking at managing some disks. So Now that I have all these lines in there, we can go through line by line here. So the first thing we'll do is do a get disk. We see that our system has 3 disks. This is disk 0 with our operating system, and then the disks 1 and 2 we just created. So careful, make sure you're doing this on a VM. So I'm going to basically erase disk number 1, and we'll see some of that happen actually in the background here, back here. Let's run line number 2. Yes to all. Are you sure, Pat? Okay, you can see in the background here that our disk is now uninitialized, and now we're going to initialize it MBR style. Good deal. And now we're going to format it. It should be the X drive when we're done. You can see the Windows picked up our X drive. Well, I guess we haven't formatted it yet. We just assigned a letter to our partition, and now we're going to format it. Good. And if I type in get volume here, I can see all the volumes on my system. Incidentally, I had a student ask this in class. What I'm doing in PowerShell, I could actually type in these same commands here and run them in PowerShell as well. So it's just a side note. I'll show you one thing real quick. Let me initialize our disk. Good. So you can see it's initialized. If I wanted to, I could either select some of the text and run these lines all, sequentially, or I can just hit this button here, run, and I can run the whole script. Yes to all. All right, so did everything. Ran lines 1 through 6, done. Good stuff. All right, so we're moving along. Now, okay, so now again, this is just kind of cool. So I threw it in there. We're going to run these lines. I could do like a PowerShell tab if I want to. All right. We kind of know what some of this does already. Line 1. Oops. Oh, in the lab, one thing that's worth noting is this line 4 here. This is one single. If you're typing this, if you're just typing everything in, this is one single line here. So we're going to do a get disk. All right, so we see our 3 disks, disk 0, disk 1, and disk 2. We're going to erase one of them, disk number 1. Yes to all. So disk 1 is erased. Now we're going to initialize it GPT as opposed to MBR like we did just previously. Okay, so it's now been initialized. The squid partition table, latest and greatest stuff. Line 4 is just kind of magic here. Let's just run it and see what happens. For watching it happen, basically what that's doing is it's creating 5 gigabyte partitions at one time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good, and they're all formatted as exFAT. And if I wanted to, I could use PowerShell to launch our disk management console here. So I could just run this line 5 here, and we could basically launch what we're seeing in the background. So that's a quick intro to using PowerShell and the command console and the GUI to managing disks. Oh, this is interesting. So I've got 5 partitions created. I still have 35 gigabytes of free space. So if I wanted to, I could go back to PowerShell here. I could just rerun line 4 again. And we're creating 5 more. One of the advantages of GPT over MBR is MBR allows for 4 partitions. With GPT, we can go up to 127. So if I wanted to, I could make 5 more partitions here that are 1 gigabyte in size. And now we're just kind of overkill, right? So that's enough of that. It looks like we're running out of letters in the alphabet pretty soon. If I look at the format of a PowerShell command, the part that's in blue here is our part in blue is our commandlet. All right. Number is called a parameter, so we're specifying, we're running the clear disk commandlet, and the number followed by this actual number 1 here tells us that we're going to clear or erase disk number 1. And this second parameter doesn't require any additional values. It essentially just says remove the data on it. I think if we run it just without the remove data piece, we get a error message saying, hey, I can't erase it because there's stuff on it. Here, I'll just highlight this piece and run this part of the command. Answer yes. I get some error. If you see something in red in PowerShell, it's typically bad. It says cannot clear disk with disk partitions present. So a commandlet in PowerShell consists of the actual commandlet followed by a number of parameters depending on the commandlet. There's tons of help. So if I just typed in PowerShell, there's a clear disk we're just running. Documentation is pretty easy to get to, and we can even see examples of how to use the clear disk. Clear disk, number, removing, heck, this is exactly what I had. And a brief explanation of what it's doing. So there you go. I hope this was informative. Thanks for taking the time to watch it, and have a great day.